scheduled to complete the construction of Tiangong by 2022. And here in the studio, we have Mr. Yang Yuguang of the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation with me. He will be watching the launch with us and give us his analysis throughout the way. Thank you very much. And final preparations are now underway for the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, which is now standing by at the launch site. Tianzhou-3 is expected to dock with the Tianhe core module and deliver around 6 tons of supplies to China's space station. Its previous cargo spacecraft, Tianzhou-2, has disconnected from the back port of the core module and moved to the front port to make room to receive Tianzhou-3. And for the very latest on this, our correspondent Zheng Yibing is now joining us live at the Wenchang spacecraft launch site with more. Great to see you there, Yibing. Now the launch is counting down to the final stages. How are preparations going there?
Well, yes, true. And now the inside and outside the Wenchang space launch site, there is a huge excitement. And everybody's waiting, like here, the platform on the control center, where people are gathering, hoping to have the great view of the whole launch site. And outside the launch site, there are said to be many people waiting on the beach, neighboring area, waiting to witness that exciting moment and history. Now the time is ticking, and the launch pad is open, and we can see the combination of the Long March 7 Y4 carrier rocket and the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft for the first time. They have undergone a complete and systematic check in the past week, either in the assembly complex next to us or in the launch pad some 3 kilometers away in the distance. And this morning, the carrier rocket has completed propellant filling. China Manned Space Engineering Office announced finally they will launch Tianzhou-3 at about 3 p.m. today or later time. Now, the whole system of China National Space Administration across the country is working together for that moment. This is another big step for China to establish the big space station and provide a solution, an invitation to the whole world for the common efforts for the space application and exploration. And today's weather in Wenchang is good, except at the current time, the ground wind speed has a little increased from about 1.7 meters per second to 2 meters per second. And the sky becomes a little bit cloudier. But in general, the working staff at the launch site said this is an optimistic condition for the liftoff. And the brand new Long March 7 Y4 has modifications on the humid weather in Wenchang. And Tianzhou-3 will carry 6 metric tons of cargo and deliver them to the China space station for the next manned mission. Materials and fuel carried by it will support Tiangong's operation and supply the astronauts on the upcoming Shenzhou-13 mission. Together, with a manned mission behind it, the Tianzhou-3 cargo craft launch marks another big step for China's space station in low Earth orbit, set to be complete by the 2022. Now let's wait and see for that lift-off moment. Back to you, Tuyan.
All right, thanks so much for the very latest. That's Zheng Yibing joining us live at the launch pad there. Now, the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft will be sent into orbit on a Long March 7 Y4 carrier rocket. China's space program uses the Long March 7 to launch cargo spacecraft. Cargo on board the Tianzhou-3 includes daily necessities as well as operational and maintenance equipment. It made its maiden flight in 2016. And Chinese space authorities say both the carrier rocket and the cargo ship are ready to be launched. Have a listen.
We've optimized the rendezvous and docking system to reduce the weight of the platform and meet the requirements for a fast and autonomous docking. The Tianzhou-3 cargo ship has undergone a comprehensive test, including a vertical stage check in the launching area, pre-launch loading, and other preparations. The vehicle is in good condition and ready for launch.
Based on the previous cargo mission, we've made improvements to the rocket to enhance its robustness. On the other hand, we've also optimized the pre-launch plan as well as judgment and reading of the signals. So far, all the functional checks have been completed. The rocket has met the conditions to be launched.
We're now joined in the studio by Professor Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation. Great to have you with us as always, Professor Yang. So tell us about what can we expect today. How long is the whole process, for the Tianzhou-3 to fly to the core module of the Tiangong space station? That process, which stages are the most crucial?
Well, you know that Long March 7 belongs to the new generation of China's launch vehicle family because it uses liquid oxygen and also kerosene as its propellant. So Long March 7 is a mid-sized launch vehicle which will play a leading role in the future China's launch market and also China's launch services because you know that its capability to the low Earth orbit is about 14 tons. But it also has a capability to the sunken synchronous orbit, typically 5.5 tons. And for this Tianzhou mission, because you know that the Tianzhou has a mass about 13.5 tons, so it has a capability to launch the Tianzhou cargo ship to orbit with an inclination about 41 to 42 degrees, and also with perigee about 200 kilometers, with the apogee about 400 kilometers to this orbit. And also you asked about the procedure. So the procedure, first it will lift off and then pitch over to the direction, generally speaking, southeast, and then fly for several seconds, about usually 3 minutes, will be the separation of the 4 boosters, and then will be the separation of the first stage. So before that, what you ask is the most critical part, because usually during the speed, very similar to the speed of sound, we call that the transonic flight. Transonic flight, at this moment, the flow field with the most complicated phases and also the vibration will be very intensive. So at this stage will be a very dangerous part. But after that also the separation itself is very critical. And then after that will be the separation of the first stage. Then the 2 payload fairings with the diameter about 4.2 meters will then be jettisoned because it is already outside the atmosphere, do not need the payload fairings any longer. So the second stage has 4 smaller rocket engines called YF-115. So that will work longer, and then when it comes into the orbit, will shut down, and then will be the separation between the launch vehicle and our Tianzhou cargo ship. So the whole procedure takes about 10 minutes, and as I mentioned, the most critical part is during the flight of the first stage and the booster phase. You know that's because Tianzhou and the Long March 7 combination has already stayed in the launch pad for several days, so we already have a very comprehensive examination. And also, you know that the Long March 7 use what we call the so-called the new triple vertical transfer mode. So it will be assembled vertically and transferred to the launch pad vertically and launched vertically. And also comparing with the Long March 2F, the moving platform also has a service tower. So the connection has been connected during it is in the vehicle assembly building, but also it will not be changed when it's transferred to the launch pad. So this brings very great conveniency for our ground staff to simplify the launch procedure, and it is possible for it to launch in a very short period. You know that the Long March 7 launch vehicle use the liquid oxygen. You already see as Mr. Zheng Yibing is reporting, so you can see that the white fog coming release from the different stages. So
right.
That is the vaporized liquid oxygen. It cannot be stored for a very long period. So this fast fast checking is very important for us.
Stay with me, Professor Yang. Now, Tianzhou-3 is on the launch pad, ready for liftoff, and let's now take a look at how it got there. Now, Tianzhou-3 is part of China's efforts to complete the building of its Tiangong space station, and the deadline is the end of 2022. Gao Yiming looks at what can we expect.
The building of the Tiangong space station is a lengthy and difficult process. Altogether, it involves 11 different journeys into space, 4 crewed flights, 4 cargo flights, and 3 to set up the actual parts of the space station. A logistical monster, but a good start is half the battle, they say, and China has certainly managed that. It all began in late April when the most important section of the space station, the core module known as Tianhe, was launched from Wenchang Space Launch Site. Tianhe will serve as the living quarters for crew members and will provide the space station's power and propulsion. It'll be joined later by 2 further capsules where the astronauts will carry out their experiments. The capsules named Wentian and Mengtian will attach themselves to either side of the core module, making a T shape. Exactly 1 month after Tianhe's launch, Wenchang was a hive of activity once again. It was time for the first shipment of cargo on board the Tianzhou-2 spacecraft to be launched. With nearly 7 tons of cargo, it marked the debut for China's space station cargo transportation system. It included propellant and supplies to support human life in the space station. The third journey was a real landmark occasion, which saw the arrival of the first people on Tiangong. It involved 3 Chinese astronauts who stayed there for 3 months. We will have to wait until October for the next episode in this remarkable mission, when a second crew will arrive at the space station. 2022 promises to bring even more excitement and construction, with Tiangong gradually taking its distinctive T shape. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
You're now watching our special coverage of the Tianzhou-3 mission. This is our second cargo resupply mission to the Tiangong space station, and we're standing by for that launch. We're scheduled to happen in about half an hour's time. So let me now bring in Professor Yang Guang for more on this. And earlier you mentioned about, the features of the Long March 7 rocket. It is very different from the Long March 5B rocket, which launched the Tianhe core module, and it's also different from the Long March 2F rocket for the manned mission, right? Tell us more about it.
Exactly. So actually speaking, usually we can also recognize the Long March 7 as a derivative of the Long March 2F series, because you know that originally we want to replace the engines of the Long March 2F. You know that the Long March 2F use the UDMH, or unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine, as a fuel, and use the NTO, or the nitrogen tetroxide, as the oxidizer. So this combination is highly toxic and highly corrosive. So it's not very environmental friendly, and also the performance of the propellants is not as good as the liquid oxygen and the kerosene. So if the engines can be replaced, the performance can be better, and also the capability can be greater. But finally, we use a different name as Long March 7. So what you mentioned, Long March 5, including Long March 5B. So the Long March 5 families now have 2 members, and the Long March 7 and Long March 6 and 8. All these belong to the new generation launch vehicle, which use the environmental friendly propellant.
All right, we're getting some picture from the Wenchang spacecraft launch center. There you have a perfect view of the rocket, the Long March 7 carrier launch vehicle we are talking about. So on top of that rocket is that Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft, now is enclosed in that large fairing, right?
Exactly. So you can see that the rotational platform has already been opened, but still you can see that there are some small arms, which means that the cables and also some pipes are still connected to the launch vehicle. Because you know that, as we have already mentioned, the white smoke, you can see that there are at least on the top of the second stage, there are white forks, and also on the top of the 4 boosters. And the first stage, there are also, because all these stages have the liquid oxygen. And we need to refill some oxygen, because during this the launching process, it will continuously evaporized. So we need some additional oxygen to that. Only maybe several minutes before the launch, we can detach the pipes.
There you are getting a picture of the control room. And earlier we saw, that was beautiful weather there at the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. And I suppose that's an ideal weather for a rocket launch, is it?
Exactly. You see that because the latitude of the Wenchang Launch Center is only about 19 or 20 degrees. So it's more close to the equator. And with this position, we can save a lot of energy. Either for the launch vehicle and also for the satellites. So it's an ideal place, theoretically speaking, on the equator, it will be the most ideal one. But that our territory do not cover the equator. So the Wenchang is the best place for us to launch, especially the low inclination orbit.
Right. And earlier we just heard that test procedure there, a mock countdown. They are testing out the launch procedure. That's why we heard the countdown there. There you see, again, the coastal launch pad. Why is this launch pad being chosen? I mean, China has several launch centers, right? One is in the Gobi Desert. That's for launching the Shenzhou manned mission.
Yes.
And this one, I suppose, is particularly for launching cargo missions. Is that right?
Not only cargo mission. You see that we've already seen that the Chang'e 5, the lunar probe, and also our Tianzhou-3 Mars probe were also launched in this launch site. Because all these are deep space missions. Usually we launch these kind of missions on a very low latitude position. So the Wenchang and together with Xichang are the right places for China to launch this kind of payload and perform these kind of missions. And also you see the other important factor is that because that the Wenchang satellite spacecraft launch site is very close to the seashore, and there is a seaport called the Qinglan seaport. So it is possible for us to transport our launch vehicles from Tianjin to Qinglan and then to this launch site. So because with ships, we do not have a limitation to the diameter of the launch vehicles. That is the reason that we can only launch our Long March 5 families in this Wenchang spacecraft launch site. Because in other launch centers, the diameter of the rocket is limited by the railway tunnels.
We're just momentarily from the launch of Tianzhou-3 mission. We're standing by for that launch. You're having a look at the pictures coming from the Wenchang spacecraft launch center. There you see the Long March 7 carrier rocket. Atop of that rocket is our Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft. Some of the upgrades have been made to the Long March rocket, as mentioned by the chief designer of the rocket. What are they? Tell us about them.
Well, actually speaking, you may still remember during the launch of the Tianzhou-2 or the Long March 7 Y3 mission, we just delayed that launch because we met some problem of the rocket boosters. So we need some improvement and check if our improvements is okay. So we, as the designer has mentioned, we just enhance the robustness of the launch vehicle. So this time, I believe it can perform better than before. You know that for any launch vehicle, there always, for any efforts you done, you cannot be sure a 100% success rate. So it is also possible for any kind of failures. So we must have these kind of measures to enhance its reliability and enhance its robustness.
All right. And talk to us about the launch window, right? There's a small modification to launch windows this time from a zero launch window to a narrow launch window. Is that right?
Very professional. You see that the basic requirement to a launch to a space station is to that when it comes into the orbit, it must in the same orbital plane as your target. So during the missions before, since the Shenzhou 8 mission in 2011, we have to use the zero launch window technology. It means that the launch time, the accuracy of the liftoff time will be better than 1 second. So that raises a very strict requirement to the whole system, not only the launch vehicle. But this time, because we have improved the guidance law or the control method, so we can change from the zero launch window to a narrow launch window. Generally speaking, the launch window can last not only 1 second, but for several minutes. Maybe 1.5 minutes. So this has greatly reduced the burdens of other systems, but raise a higher requirement to the launch vehicle itself and also the control system. So if the best launch window is missed, you still have the chance. But after that, you have to launch another time, maybe tomorrow.
Right. And, just in July this year, American billionaire Jeff Bezos sent himself up to space using a reusable rocket. But this rocket right here is not reusable. But I understand that China has been testing reusable rocket, right? How's that coming along?
Quite right. You may remember that just maybe last year or at the early of the year, we just have the maiden flight of the Long March 8 launch vehicle. Long March 8 also can be recognized as a derivative of the Long March 7 because it uses 2 boosters rather than the 4 booster used by the Long March 7. But the second stage of the Long March 8 is different from the Long March 7. It uses the third stage of the Long March 3A as the second stage of the Long March 8, so a little bit complex.
Wow.
But although the first maiden flight has not been reused, but we plan to recover the first stage and the boosters of Long March 8. But still, to achieve this, we still have to facing and solving some challenges and also so many key technologies. So we still need to wait.
Right, and it's not just Jeff Bezos, right? Another American, Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Galactic, he completed a space travel himself aboard the spaceship they developed. Now, that has generated a lot of interest around the world. I mean, in China, is commercial space travel something that we could see in the future, maybe?
Technically speaking, it is right possible because we've already mastered these kind of technologies. But whether a commercial company or a private company can provide this kind of service, we still need the policies from the government. So I hope that this can be achieved. And moreover, what you mentioned, Blue Origin and the Virgin Galactic have done is the suborbital launch space tourism. So it's much cheaper than the orbital space tourism, like the Inspiration 4 have done just 2 days before. So this kind of suborbital space tourism brings us chance for the common people to go into outer space.
Sorry to interrupt. We just heard the count out there. That's 15 minutes out. That's the announcement there. That's the call out. T-minus 15 minutes. Once again, if you are just joining us, you're now watching our special coverage of the Tianzhou-3 mission, the second cargo resupply mission to the new Tiangong space station, currently under construction in low Earth orbit. And this mission will mark the 4th of 11 launches needed for the construction phase of the China space station. Oh, there you see the countdown clock. So that was 16 minutes before the launch. So it's T-minus 16 minutes, 48 seconds. As a split screen you are seeing there on your left is the Long March 7 carrier rocket. On top of that is the Tianzhou-3 spacecraft. On your right, you see the countdown clock, and you're getting a look at the control center. People are there, a series of command are running out there in the comm system. They're testing out, they're doing their final preparations. Also talk to us about the Tianzhou mission, Professor Yang. Tianzhou-3 is the 4th of the 11 missions designed to build China's 3-module space station, which is called Tiangong, or Heavenly Palace. You know what? A series of command is being called out there. Let's actually listen in.
Well, the Tianzhou-3 mission is a very critical preparation for the Shenzhou-13 mission. You know that during this Tianzhou-3 mission, we will have the resupplies for the 6 months of residence of 3 astronauts in outer space. So this is the most important part of this mission. And also, we have another EVA spacesuits on board this Tianzhou-3 because we already have 2 spacesuits brought by the Tianzhou-2 to our Tianhe-1 core module. But you know that's the lifespan of our Feitian second generation Feitian spacesuits is about 15 times. So we need some replacement. This time we will bring new spacesuits to our Tiangong space station. And also, we have the instruments for scientific research and some spare parts of the instruments and also with the spacesuits as well. Also, there are other part of these supplies is the propellant. You see that the Tianzhou or the cargo ships use the same types of propellant. Okay, 15 minutes
there you
counting.
See, that's the call out. That's T-minus 15.
So you see that, as we've seen from the previous video, the commander of the launch site just received report from different systems. For instance, the ground tracking stations, and also the launch pad, and also that other system. Only when all these systems are okay, the procedure can go on.
Yeah, we're hearing words that the ground staff are now pulling back from the launch pad. signaling that the launch is a go. It's entering the final stages there.
You can also see from this screen that all the rotation platform has been turned and withdrawn to its end position. And still, there are several rotational arms still connected close to the vehicle and with the cables connected to the launch vehicle.
Right.
At this moment, the power supply is from the ground. And also, there are pipelines to provide the liquid oxygen. Only several minutes before the launch, the power supply will turn from the ground to the batteries on board the launch vehicle. And then we'll detach the connections, we'll detach the plug-ins from the vehicle, and then the rotation arms will turn back.
Right.
So at this moment, the launch goes on.
That will happen right before the launch, right? Probably
Exactly.
within 1 minute or so. And I was hearing words from my producer telling me that this will be an automatic launch. Is that right? So it's a robotic launch. It will not be
Quite
pressed by
You don't need
any
to
human.
press the button. Because all this will be followed by the program, by the computers. So this can increase the accuracy of the launch time.
All right.
Actually speaking, China uses a different system comparing with other countries. So the zero, the count to zero, the zero moment is the moment that we ignite our rocket engines. While for other countries, this zero is time of liftoff. So you can always hear from the commander and also his colleagues that after the vehicle lift off, they will report the actual lift off time, because zero means to the moment we ignite the engines, not lift off. So it's quite different from other countries.
Right, quite different. So no buttons will be pressed this time during
Exactly.
launch. And you were talking about the payloads, and Tianzhou-3 spacecraft will be carrying into space 6 tons of mission payloads and supply. That's a lot. And how to pack all those cargoes in the most efficient way in terms of saving space can be quite a challenge.
Exactly, and also you know that for some certain payloads, some special payload, we can only bring that to the cargo ship maybe several hours before the launch, because you know that, for instance, in the future we want to perform scientific study. Maybe we want to have some animals to the space station, some mouse, maybe some insects, for instance. Because these living things, we must keep living condition for them. So only several hours before the launch, we can put that into the cargo ship. So this is very special. And also maybe some samples need the very cold temperature. So also there are some special requirements of this kind of cargo for scientific research. But you know that the Tianzhou spaceship, comparing with cargo ships of other countries, have the highest efficiency. We can have more than half of the mass, of the total mass, are cargoes. So this, although maybe it cannot bring cargoes back to the Earth, but for uploading cargoes to the station, it has the highest efficiency.
Do we have any live plants, live animals on Tianzhou-3 this time? No,
Not
right?
formally announced this time, but in the future, I believe we do have this kind of experiment. In fact, you know that the UNUSA, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, and has cooperated with China Manned Space Agency to have joint experiments between Chinese scientists and scientists from other countries. So during these kind of joint experiments, especially those space medicine and space biological experiments, it is possible for these kind of things happen.
You know, those astronauts on board the Tianzhou-3 mission, which will be launched presumably in October, they are going to spend the Spring Festival up there on the space station. So it's been reported that the staffs have packed dumplings and lanterns for them too, for them to spend the holiday up there.
I wonder, maybe this also happened. And also, I believe there are mooncakes on board. Maybe on board this spaceship.
There's the T-minus 10 minutes. T-minus 10.
各号注意，10分钟，准备。
Where you heard the call out there, T-minus 10 minutes. You know, previously for a short mission, the water and oxygen that those astronauts needed to sustain their lives can be brought up there, but for a long duration stay, such as Tianzhou-3, Tianzhou-13, they probably will have to rely on regenerative life support. Is that right?
You may notice that during when Mr. Nie Haisheng opened the hatch and came into the Tianhe 1 module, the ground control, the commander just sent a command. Please switch on the water, the oxygen generator. We use electricity and you use water to produce the oxygen, because you know that's in the former missions usually we use oxygen tanks to provide the oxygen for the astronaut, but the oxygen is very difficult to be stored. The water is easier. So we just not bring so many oxygen tanks to the station, but just brings water there. And with the electricity, we can produce oxygen and hydrogen. So the oxygen can be breathed by the astronauts, and the hydrogen can be used to generate oxygen from the carbon dioxide.
Right, and you know, as we are launching Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft into space, what happens to the Tianzhou-2 cargo ship? It's still docked with Tianhe now, but what happens next?
Well, you know that just after the Shenzhou-12 crew left the station, originally just before they left, the Tianzhou-2 cargo ship is docked to the rear docking port of the station.
Right.
So after the Shenzhou-12 crew left, the front docking port is free. So the Tianzhou-2 detached from the station and then fly to the front docking port and then docked automatically to the front docking port. This is to for some very critical steps for the future missions. You know that we can have the refueling capabilities for our station. And the refueling can be done from the front and also can be done from the rear docking port. So the refueling tests from both docking ports can raise the reliability and the redundancy of the whole station. It is very important. The more important thing is that, you know that as you have already mentioned, our T-shaped station has two other experimental modules, which will first dock to the station from the front docking port and then transposition to the side berthing port.
Right.
But before that, we must test the technologies to using the robotic arm to aid the transposition of the modules. But this time, the Tianzhou-2 will simulate the experimental modules, and we will use the robotic arm to turn this Tianzhou-2 from the front docking port to the side berthing port. So this is to also make sure that in the future we can be 100% success for the construction.
And just how different is this cargo mission compared with that of the Tianzhou-2 mission? I mean, longer duration for sure, so more supplies, but what else?
Exactly. As we have already discussed, we must have the resupplies for 6 months. Almost double of those brought by the Tianzhou-2 mission. So this time, because you know that 6 months is quite a long period, and also as you mentioned, they will enjoy their New Year there, and also the Lunar New Year there. So they must have this kind of, as you mentioned, maybe yes, exactly, maybe dumpling and other things.
Lanterns.
But also the water is very critical.
Right.
As you mentioned, we use the water recovery system to regenerate and reuse the water. And so we don't need to bring so much oxygen and water to the station. So this is very critical,
That's
not only for this mission.
T-6. Continue.
Exactly. So at this moment, most of the subsystems of the launch vehicle is tested, and we, you know, usually during the whole counting down procedure, we test many subsystems of the launch vehicle, especially the GNC or the guidance, navigation and control system, and also the telemetry and the communication system, and also we must monitoring very strictly the parameters and the status of the propulsion system. This is also very important. Either the rocket engines and also the fuel tanks. Very, very important. Because this cryogenic propulsion system, although it has a very high performance, but also it is very difficult to master. The engines used we use the 4 YF-100 engines on the first stage on the core, and also we use another 4 rocket engines on the boosters. So the liftoff thrust is higher than 720 tons. Okay, T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
Right, the final 5 minutes there. And after it's being launched into orbit, it's expected to complete automatic dock and rendezvous with the Tiangong space station.
Yes, we will use again, the fast and autonomous rendezvous and docking maybe takes 6 to 8 hours. Just it will be happened today.
Beijing time today,
Yes, exactly. So the fast rendezvous and docking, you know that we haven't practiced this many times before. During the during the Tianzhou-3 and the Tiangong-2 mission, we just tested this technology partially. And also we practiced this fast rendezvous during the Tianzhou-2 and the Shenzhou-12 mission. So this time will be the third one, complete one. And we can master this technology after many times of rendezvous and docking, just more practice.
And tell us more about, the missions to build the space station. How many manned missions? How many are cargo missions? Any important milestones we should be looking out for?
Well, you know that after the construction of the station, we will have the turnover of each expedition will be 6 months. So every year we need to have at least 2 launch of the Shenzhou crewed missions.
And why 6 months? Is that a standard duration from now on?
Because that's the balance between efficiency and the feelings of convenience of the astronauts. For a longer time, that it will be a little bit, maybe they will have homesick. And also
there you see that monitor showing you all the weather conditions there, the humidity, the temperature, 32 degrees Celsius, wind speed, right, and visibility.
It looks very ideal, although there are clouds, but it's very ideal. The weather is fine for the launch.
All right, that's good to hear. That's a relief. All right, it's T-minus 3 minutes to launch. An exciting moment. That's the call out there.
So because that it's a very flat place, and even outside the launch site, the fences can watch the launch, the liftoff of the launch vehicle. So there are so many people. I heard that there are more than 40,000 audience.
Wow. I really wish I could be there though. But as you can hear, it's quieter than before, because we're getting close to time zero. Not so much going on, unlike what we heard before, except for a few simple commands and final countdown. That's because the final status check by now has all been completed. So that's a good sign. You don't want to hear too much noises at this time.
You know that the launch procedure can also be improved and optimized for every time. That's as you mentioned, it is an automatic one. So the ignition will be controlled by the computers on the ground.
Right.
So that will be more accurate than before.
That's the call out. T-minus 2 minutes. For the launch team, what do you think is going through their minds during these last few minutes and seconds leading up to time zero? I mean, they've been going through extensive launches in the past couple of months, manned or unmanned, all very successful. I suppose they're quite familiar with the drill, but will this still be a nerve-wracking moment for them?
Exactly. As I mentioned, no one can ensure a 100% for any flight missions. There are still uncertainties. So, and also the reliability cannot reach 100%.
All right. We might be able to see some movement there. There you see the opening of one of the mechanical arms, releasing the rocket.
I believe
Another
that some
there.
cables have detached from the body of the launch
umbilical
vehicle.
detachment, we're going to see that.
Yeah. Also, we have cameras and monitoring the whole detaching process. So unplug the plug-ins and also and disconnect the pipes.
Okay. So the rocket has been completely released from the launch tower.
遥测向正常，文昌飞行正常。
文昌 radio signal normal.
110跟正常。
110 normal.
文昌光学雷达跟正常。
文昌光学 radar normal and radio signal normal. Flight normal.
阵地112跟正常。
阵地112 normal.
阵地315跟正常。
阵地315 normal.
文昌光学雷达跟正常，遥测向正常。
文昌
飞行正常。
radar normal, flight normal, and radio image normal.
铜鼓岭遥测向正常。
Radio image at Tongguling normal.
317跟正常。
317 normal tracking.
文昌光学雷达跟正常。
文昌光学 radar normal, flight normal, and radio image normal.
阵地112跟正常。
阵地112 normal tracking.
助力器关机。 助力
Propellant
器分离。
turn off. Propellant separated.
一级关机。
Stage 1 rocket turned
一
off.
级分离。
Stage 1 rocket separated.
西沙313跟正常。
313 normal tracking.
抛整流罩。
Fairing separated. Fairing separated.
文昌光学雷达跟正常。
文昌
遥测
光学
向正常。文昌飞行
文
正常。
昌 radar normal and tracking normal.
317跟正常。
317 normal tracking.
西沙424跟正常。
414 tracking normal.
Okay, you were looking at the picture of the flight of Tianzhou-3 cargo craft on
Yes.
board a Long March 7 carrier rocket.
文昌
And
雷达
on
跟
your
正常。
left,
遥测
文
向正
昌
常。
on the
radar
left
tracking
is the
normal,
video from
video
the
image
camera
normal,
mounted
and
on
flight
the,
normal.
on the rocket and facing frontwards. So you can see from this camera, you can see the body of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship. And you can see on
it's
the right,
exposed in space now.
yeah, on the right is a 3D animation to show the status of the launch vehicle itself.
Right.
Now it is in the flight of the second stage. You can see that the 4 engines of the second stage is burning now. The second stage have 4 engines, 2 are fixed, and 2 have the rotational units, servo units. Right. So the first the 2 fixed engines will be shut off, and then the 2 which can move and then shut off. And that after that will be the separation between the launch vehicle and the spaceship.
And I have to mention that on your right, that 3D animation is based on real-time telemetry, as mentioned by Professor Yang. It's not a pre-made video program. And on your left, after the payload fairing deployment, you can see the spacecraft is exposed entirely in space. And talk to us more about the structures we see here. We see a satellite dish on the tip of that spacecraft and 2 containers-like structure there. What are they?
Well, the dish you mentioned is a dish for the data relay satellite for high bandwidth communications.
So just like satellite dish.
Exactly. Okay. So and also the difference is that it is movable. It has 2 servo units which can rotate in 2 directions. So it can facing the direction of the Tianlian data relay satellite at any moment, which can transfer, for instance, the videos and other complex data of the
back to the ground.
Exactly.
Excellent. And what about those container-like?
And also you can see the nozzles of the attitude control engines. So the Tianzhou cargo ship has multiple engines because you know that the vehicle has to dock with the station. It must have a capability to not only control its orbit but also control its attitude.
All right, so those are the nozzles of engines, actually.
And also, you see that the dash lines on the right of the 3D animation represent the data link between the ground station and the launch vehicle itself.
Right, and the rocket is now running on its second stage, is that right? We're preparing for second stage shutdown. That's going to happen momentarily.
Actually speaking, the first will be shutdown of the 2 of the 4 engines, and then the other 2.
The entire flight is only going to last about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes,
not
exactly.
Not that long.
Not very long, because it only needs to send the spaceship to a low Earth orbit with the perigee, or the lowest point, about 200 kilometers, and the height points the same as the station.
And we are more than halfway into the flight already.
Yes.
And to you, up to this point, everything so far so good?
Exactly. The most critical phase has already been passed. What we mentioned is the during the flight in the atmosphere, because it's more complex and the vibration is more intensive. So it's more possible in that phase to have some failures. So at this moment, it's already outside the atmosphere. So it's the vibration is not so strong, and also the condition is better.
Oh, they are looking pretty chill there, actually. I suppose, as like you mentioned, the most difficult stages has already been completed.
Yes, it seems that they are already very relaxed now.
Yeah, we heard actually several rounds of cheerings when we saw successful booster separations, first stage separations, payload fairing, deployment. So it's going great now.
So you can see from the camera that the background is already very dark. Outside the atmosphere, even in the day, you can see that the sky is black.
Right, and we can see the clear visual is because there are lights, built on that spacecraft, so that you can illuminate the rocket, and that could provide a good visual reference for the engineers, scientists on the ground there.
Currently, it's just under the sunshine.
And as we speak, where is how far is the Tianzhou spacecraft away from Tiangong space station?
Okay, as I mentioned, the fixed engines, the 2 fixed engines has already been shut down.
Right, that's the call out there, a key movement, the shutdown of second stage.
So the other 2 engines will make some very slight but very accurate adjustment to make sure that the orbit of the cargo ship. Great, the vernier engines are shut down.
Some fun too. There you see a successful spacecraft separation.
So great. So the next step will be the unfolding of the solar panels of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship.
And that will signal successful of the whole launch process.
So at this moment, the launch vehicle has accomplished its responsibility.
Its mission.
Yes, the launch is very successful.
Right. We've seen we are more than 600 seconds into the mission, more than 10 minutes into the mission, and the spacecraft has been successfully separated from the second stage engine, second stage rocket. And that's the 3D
and then
animation.
The payload, the solar panels will be unfolded and extended.
Right, and talk to us more about the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft. We're looking at two major components. Is it one cargo carbon and one propellant?
The cargo bay usually the cargo bay is on the front with a docking port.
So on your right of the animation we're seeing
and the propulsion module or the service module is on the left. So it's not only provide the propulsion or the orbit maneuver, but also can provide the power supplies.
And is now flying toward the Tiangong space station.
Yes, and also the part of the propellant used by our Tiangong station are also stored in this service module or the propulsion module. Because as I mentioned, the Tianzhou cargo ship use the same propellant like our Tianhe core module. So it can be shared with the station.
Okay, fascinating.
So after it is docked to the station, the propellants can be refueled to the station, or we can also use the rocket engines, as you will already see from the separation, the 4 engines at the back of the service module to raise the orbit of the whole station. Because you know that the station orbiting the Earth in the very low orbit, the aerodynamic drag is very remarkable. So for maybe several days, it needs to change its orbit from a lower one to a higher one. So the Tianzhou spaceship can do these kind of things.
And another key moment we're standing by for now is the deployment of solar panels.
Yes,
right.
And also the deployment
Is that a look of the solar panels? What are we looking at on our left? Talk to us more about the functions of those solar panels. Everything.
Okay. So you know that the 3D animation represents the real state of the vehicle itself.
That's a successful deployment of the solar panels.
So this means that now the cargo ship has continuous power supply. So we don't worry, it can stay properly in outer space now.
Based on solar energy.
Yes. And we have what we call is SADA, or the Solar Array Drive Assembly, to rotate its direction. So it can facing the direction of the sun in the ideal direction to make sure it has sufficient energy.
So next major mission for the Tianzhou-3 spacecraft is to fly toward Tiangong space station and dock and rendezvous with Tianzhou.
Because you know, at this moment, the orbit of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship is lower than the space station, which means that it can rotate the Earth faster than the station. So it is a chasing vehicle, chase the space station, and finally, maybe after 6 to 8 hours, they can go together.
Oh, wow. So it's chasing the Tiangong space station from the back.
Yes, but they were already in the same orbital plane. So that's a basic requirement. That is why we requires a very strict, either a zero launch window or a narrow launch window.
And how challenging will that dock and rendezvous process?
Well, it's still, you know, that it's a very complex procedure, although we've already performed that many times before, but still it is a very challenging and very dangerous part. And also, you know that during the docking process, we use multiple sensors, for instance, the rendezvous and the docking radar, and also the LiDAR, and also optical sensors to make sure that we can measure the relative distance, relative speed, and relative attitude very precisely to ensure the docking procedure. And we use the APAS, or the androgynous peripheral attach system, or androgynous peripheral assembly system to connect the two vehicles. This follows the international standards. So in the future, it is possible, technically speaking, for other countries to dock with China's space station only with a very slight change of their docking system.
And of course, this mission is setting the stage for the Tianzhou-3 mission, right, which is expected to launch another 3 astronauts into space. Tell us more about that. Do we know who these 3 astronauts are going to be?
It is not formally announced, but during some interview of the staff of our staff, maybe possible to have female astronauts.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
because
something
you
to
know
look
that
forward
our
to.
current two space girls, Miss Liu Yang and Miss Wang Yaping, like sweet food. So I believe that if so, if they have female astronauts, have our space girls, I believe their cargoes may have some sweet food for them.
Wow. So there will be, there might be a female astronaut, and there will be a mix of veteran astronauts and new astronauts, I suppose?
Exactly. You see that during the Tianzhou-3 mission, we have 2 veterans and 1 newcomer.
Right.
Mr. Ni Haisheng even already had 2 flight missions before. So I believe this also be the similar configuration of the crew this time for the Tianzhou-13. Because still it is very important during this, what we call the technology demonstration phase.
Right. And you mentioned there will be spacesuits. There are spacesuits in that Tianzhou-3 spacecraft, so they are preparing for EVA spacewalks, right?
Absolutely, because you know that EVA is very, very important, very, very critical for not only the construction, repairing, maintenance of our space station, but also very critical for many, many scientific and engineering research. You know that although we've already been very successful during the 2 EVAs of the Tianzhou-3 mission, but still, you know that we have to catch up with advanced countries in this field, the Russia and the US, they have performed so many EVAs during their flight in the ISS, in the shuttle missions, and in the missions of Mir.
And what would you say would be the most challenging part for that Tianzhou-13 manned mission?
Very interesting. You know that this Tianzhou-3 cargo ship will occupy the front docking port. So there is no choice, but the Tianzhou-13 mission has to dock to the rational docking port, or the docking port facing the Earth. So it's quite different. You know that during the former missions, we only dock from the front or from the back. That's relatively easy, although it is still very tough, but still comparing with docking from the bottom, it is easier. So this time, although you know that just several days before, after the Tianzhou-12 is detached from the station, it also demonstrates the technology and the procedure to approaching the station from the bottom docking port. So this is a very good preparation for the Tianzhou-13 mission. But this time, really, the Tianzhou-13 mission, the crew will facing this challenge to docking from the bottom docking port.
Oh, wow. And you mentioned what's on that Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, but how does it compare with, other cargo ships, for example, in other countries?
北京文昌报告，下面请文昌发射场区指挥部邓红琴指挥长宣布发射结果。
Okay, they will
All
announce
right, the
the
announcement
result.
is coming up. That's the official announcement that's going to be announced by officials at the launch team.
Yes. So, as you have asked, although our Tianzhou spaceship is not the largest one is the ATV from Europe. Okay, they will announce.
各位专家、同志们，根据
Dear
运载火箭飞
experts,
行数据
dear
和
colleagues,
北
according
京
to the
航天器
data
飞
of
行
the
中
cargo
心
ship
监
and
视计
also
算，
according to the
天舟3
calculation
号
of
货
the
运飞船
Beijing
已
Space
准确进
Control
入
Center,
预定轨道。
Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft has entered the orbit accurately.
现在我宣布
The space cargo is in great conditions. Now I would like to announce a full success of this mission.
在此，我代表
Here, on behalf of the Wenchang spacecraft launch site
任务指挥部
and also the
参加这次任务的
Command Control Center,
和全体
I would like to extend a sincere gratitude to all the colleagues and all the researchers
专家表
who
示
have
衷心感
supported
谢。
this mission.
此次任务
My thanks also go to all those experts behind this mission. And this is the end of today's launch. Thank you very much.
北京文昌报告，发射结果宣布完毕。
Wenchang reports, and this is the end of today's launch mission.
对象还没来，这现在开始说了吗？
All right, there you have it, an official confirmation from the command center. The launch is now a success. Once again, the launch of the Tianzhou-3 cargo ship is a success. How do you make all of this? Another milestone that we've witnessed together?
Well, this is really a very important step for the what we have already mentioned, the construction phase of our Tiangong space station. Just before the formal construction, we have to have the what we call the technology demonstration phase. During this phase, we will have the Tianzhou-12 and the Tianzhou-13 mission to test all the technologies needed for the construction and for the future operation of our space station. But just before the station, as we already mentioned, the Tianzhou-2 is very important for the Tianzhou-12 mission. Well, this Tianzhou-3 is really important for the Tianzhou-13 crew because all the necessary resupplies were already in space. So maybe several hours later, it will dock to the station. Now our future crew of the Tianzhou-13 will have their supplies. They will not worry about their waters, their oxygen, their food, and other things.
All right, Professor Yang, stay with me. Now, Tianzhou cargo ships are the courier that China's manned space mission has come to depend on, as Professor Yang mentioned earlier. And as our Sun-Ye reports, there's much more to them than meets the eyes.
Tianzhou cargo ships have been delivering all kinds of supplies to China's space station, from food to clothes, including spacesuits. They are like delivery men on Earth, but space carriers are faster, more efficient, and more reliable. Space engineer Jia Dongyong says Tianzhou cargo ships now hold a world record.
One of the best ways to evaluate a carrier spaceship is the ratio of load to total weight. The more the payload, the better. Now, Tianzhou weighs 13.5 tons in total and can carry 6.5 tons of payload. That's a ratio of almost 0.48.
The more a cargo ship carries, the more cost-efficient it is, and the more it can contribute to space exploration.
For example, if Chinese scientists want to do some large-scale experiments, they can deliver the equipment by cargo spacecraft.
And the packing process inside the carrier ship follows tested scientific rules.
Packages are laid out in a way to guarantee balance. Heavier objectives generally go into the section below. We also want them to be easily accessed by astronauts, so, for example, things that will be used first are packed last.
So just like Tianzhou cargo ships are uniform in shape, they're also uniform in being reliable and efficient. Sun-Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
And Tianzhou-3 cargo ship's mission this time would be similar and fine-tuned compared to its predecessors, Tianzhou-2, as space engineers in the mission explains to CGTN's Sun-Ye.
Tianzhou cargo ships come in similar functions and tasks. Their loads are pre-planned and are fine-tuned for each time. Compared with Tianzhou-2, Tianzhou-3 is carrying different things, for example, fuel propellant. And as Tianzhou-3 is providing for the 3-person crew for a 6-month stay, expected to, for example, consume more food this time. There is one set of spacesuit for spacewalking. They all hold around 6 tons of payload, but the content's different as we are past the first stage now and entering the next stage.
So, Professor Yang, talk to us about the major tasks we can expect for Tianzhou-13 mission,
Well, as we already discussed, the Tianzhou-13 crew will stay in the station for 6 months. You will know that the formal or the ordinary turnover of each expedition team of the future operations phase will be 6 months. So every year we will launch at least 2 Shenzhou spaceships to dock with the station and change the expedition team of the station. But you know that to master or have a very smooth operation, we need to test the technologies necessary for the astronaut to stay in space or residence in space for 6 months. The Tianzhou-12 has made a very good preparation for this phase, because you know that although you know that the Shenzhou-11 mission and the Tiangong-2 has achieved the midterm residence in space, but at that moment we only use the non-regenerative life support system. While for the Shenzhou-12 crew, we have already tested the efficiency and the correct of the design of our regenerative life support system. But still, the 3 months is quite different from 6 months. So this time, the Tianzhou-3 mission will test whether we can stay properly in the station for 6 months and then go back to the Earth with very healthy condition. So this is very important, also recognized as a good preparation for the future operation. Moreover, you see, as we already also discussed, we must have more EVAs and more complex operations outside the station. Last time, we already mounted not only change the position of the panoramic cameras, but also install some backup pumps for the station. In the future, I believe during the Tianzhou-3 mission, the operation of the EVA will be more challenging and more complex. So we just have more practice in this field. Moreover, you see that during the announcement of the China Manned Space Agency, we will have about 42 biological experiments on board this station during the technology demonstration phase. So 14 has been already performed by the Tianzhou-12 crew. So I believe the others will be performed by the Tianzhou-13 crew because they stay there longer. You may notice that during the residence of the Tianzhou-12, they take their blood samples maybe every several days.
Thank you very much for your insights, Professor Yang. Appreciate your perspectives as always.
Thank
now,
you.
our reporter Sun Ye is standing by at Aerospace Control Center in Beijing. Great to see you there, Sun Ye. What's the latest from where you are?
Hi, Qiuyuan. Here in the Beijing Control Center, we've also heard that piece of good news as you had. Wenchang has announced the success of the liftoff. And here at the Beijing Control Center, there's a huge round of applause too. But of course, right now, Tianzhou-3 cargo ship's mission has only just started even just for the day. In about 7 hours' time, it's going to rendezvous and dock with the Tianhe core module, which just saw off China's first long-term coup of taikonauts a few days before. And then the Tianzhou-3, this cargo ship, it's in preparation for the incoming next batch of taikonauts that are scheduled to go there as early as October. And we have a relatively clear time frame today. We know that around at 9 o'clock, which is in 7 hours' time, the rendezvous and docking is going to take place. That's similar to what Tianzhou-2, that cargo ship, did a few months ago. Of course, this is the two Tianzhou-2 and 3 cargo ships. They are of the same batch. They're all going to employ that fast automated docking and rendezvous technology. They're very similar in the process, but space engineers here at the Beijing Control Center have been telling us one of their goals for design is to make that whole process streamlined and serialized. Space engineers here have been telling us that the China Space Station project is a long-term project and it has a relatively frequent launch plans and of course the docking plans. So they were designing to make their whole process standardized and streamlined, and hoping it would apply to all the missions. But that said, Tianzhou-3's mission is still a little bit different from before, on the heel of the success of Shenzhou-12 and Tianzhou-2, as space engineers have been telling us. That complete success a few days before means China's space station's project is going to a new next stage. And Tianzhou-3 cargo ship, it's going to be preparing for the incoming Shenzhou-13 crew, and it's bringing a different amount of payload. That's in preparation for a longer 6-month stay. And that's including food, their necessities, and one set of spacesuit. And as we wait here in the next 7 hours, we could be hearing more from the Tianzhou cargo ship. Qiuyuan.
Certainly looking forward to all of that. Thank you very much. Please do stay in touch. Sun Ye joining us live from Beijing Aerospace City. Now, China's Manned Space Engineering Office has declared the launch of the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft a success. It's taken off from the Wenchang launch site in Hainan province, and the cargo craft will then rendezvous and dock with Tiangong, China's orbiting space station. And let's now take a look at key moments of the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft launch. And that's going to do it for this special coverage on Tianzhou-3's launch. Thank you so much for staying with us. Bye for now.